Well, when I was an undergraduate at Harvard University, I was a political science major and I took a course in modern Chinese government, and this was about 1973. And though I did not engage with China immediately, this really set the stage for my future involvement. My very first visit was in 1993. At that point, I was the orchestra manager of the Philadelphia Orchestra, and I went in March of that year to help them prepare for their tour. We learned as we were preparing for the tour that, in fact, the relationship between the Philadelphia Orchestra and China dated back to 1940. During the War of Japanese Aggression, the Dr. Norman Bethune traveled around the United States trying to drum up support for China. And he did this in Philadelphia. And in 1940, the Philadelphia Orchestra and members of the Curtis Institute performed a fundraising concert for Chinese hospitals for women and children. And the then Chinese ambassador to the United States, Hu Shi, actually came up to Philadelphia and emceed this program. And this concert was an all-star concert, and it raised over $100,000 in today's money for Chinese hospitals. Well, fast forward many years. In 1972, after the ping-pong diplomacy in US and China were trying to determine what should be next, the Chinese government was shown a menu of different options. Of course, Philadelphia Orchestra always wanted to be first, and so they volunteered themselves. But when the Chinese government saw the Philadelphia Orchestra on this list, they said, oh, yes, the Philadelphia Orchestra, they are our old friends. They supported us back in 1940. We would like to invite them. So, in fact, this was the continuation in 1993 of a history of US-China relations, close relations that dated back to 1940, before New China. When I got to China in 1993, what I had learned in that course allowed me to realize that times were changing in China. I was first impressed by how passionate the Chinese were for music and culture in general. Very hardworking, very diligent. Certainly they treated the Philadelphia Orchestra musicians like rock stars. We were mobbed wherever we went, and the applause was wild, and the concerts were sold out. It was the beginning of the economic growth of China, so there were other priorities. And because of the difficulty in communication and the way the Ministry of Culture was structured, there were not very frequent exchanges between our countries. The changes have been tremendous and very exciting. By the early 2000s, the reform and opening up movement finally reached the cultural sector, and the Ministry of Culture reformed the way they did business so that they took on a more policy and regulatory focus rather than operations, and they opened that economy to the Chinese people as well, and that made for a much quicker development, many more opportunities for the Chinese domestic cultural industry to grow, as well as to engage with international entities. I think that older and younger generation Chinese artists approach their craft, their intent differently. The older creators were more literal, and they would say, okay, this is a concerto about the Yellow River, or this is a ballet inspired by Dream of Red Mansions or by Farewell My Concubine, and being very, very overt about this. And as a result, we have seen the challenges because too many people continue to work on these same themes, and for a Western audience, because that's not their culture, it's like, oh no, not another Molihua, not another Farewell My Concubine. It's nothing new. It doesn't to see this treated 10 different ways does not have more attraction for them. I think what we're seeing in the younger generation is treating Chinese cultural values in a very important way, but in a way that is not so literal, not so obvious, not so on the surface. China has heard America's music since the 1800s, but we are just beginning to learn more about Chinese music. We need more scores, we need more parts, we need greater distribution so that all of our ensembles can play the music. We need greater distribution so that elementary schools can learn Chinese folk songs. We need people who speak both languages to explain to us the meaning of the music and the context, because too often now Americans will come to one or two music performances that feature Chinese music, let's say during the Chinese New Year, and they sit passively and consume the same works over and over again and go home and never learn context, and they also never have the opportunity to engage with the other Chinese performers. So I think there needs to be more ancillary events created, more other opportunities to talk with the performers and the creators of the music, and vice versa, so that we can know each other better.